Now, in terms of how to build your bullet points, what we really recommend is that you use what we call the SAR framework. So it's situation, action, and result. So the situation, for example, in this case could be, there was a failing sales in a product. What was his action? He implemented a new marketing strategy. And what was the results? As a result, sales were X above forecast. So this is a great example of how to build a very good bullet points. I think bullet points that have these three elements are very complete, and it gives a nice soundbite of exactly what your achievement was. So again, if I go back to, what a CV should include is, what I did, how did I do it, and what impact I had. And the SAR framework provides a bullet point that has these three elements. Now, in terms of which of these elements should come first, it doesn't actually really matter. But what's very important is to always start with an action verb. And why is that important? I mean, in the case of Danielle, who was the recruiter that I mentioned from Novartis headquarters a few years ago, she told me that one of the things that she looked at, again, it's 30 seconds, scanning the CV to decide, is this a person I want to interview or not? And she said one of the things that she would do is literally go down the bullet points, look at the action verbs, and if there were action verbs that were related to the competencies that she generally looked at, then she read the rest of the bullet point. If not, she just felt, actually, it's not worth my while. I've got another, 449 CVs to look at. So starting with a powerful action verb is extremely important. So for career changes, the majority of people coming to do a program in the MBA are looking to do some kind of career change. And, you can't change your past, but you can certainly be very intelligent in the way that you manage information to make it look as the things that you need to reflect to the position that you're going. So, I've got this picture of, basically hacking what your past was, which was, square, to make it round. And there are two ways in which you can really make your CV sort of more friendly to the position that you're applying to. And one of the things that you can do is to basically highlight the functional aspects of which you're going to. I do career management, and at a push I could actually make my CV look financial, because all I would do is to emphasize the financial aspects of what my job role is. So career management, budget, career management, budget control, forecasting, it would have to be a bit of a push, but instead of emphasizing a lot of other things that I do, I would only highlight the things that are relevant to the position that I'm applying to. And job roles nowadays are not so linear. You've got different elements. So in all job roles, you're going to have a bit of marketing, a bit of finance, a bit of operations. So what you need to do if you're looking to make a career change is to really emphasize those functional aspects to make your CV more credible for the thing that you're applying to. The other thing is that we're all people, and we're all people with skills. So, emphasizing on your CV that you have all the skills that they're looking for is a way of making your candidacy, a lot stronger. As I say, you can't change your past. If you were a techie doing software development for a company, you can't necessarily change that. But if you were a leader of a team, if you were a great team player, if you're a good communicator, these are skills that you can definitely transfer to your new position. And companies are not only looking for previous background, but they're also looking for skills and potential. So if you can reflect those well in your CV, it's a way of making your candidacy a lot stronger. So I spoke earlier that human resources speak the language of competency, and now we're going to go into exactly what this means. In a lot of job postings, human resources might put things like, I'm looking for leadership, or I'm looking for results orientation, or customer focus. And this is the way that HR review a candidate. Now, what I find is that when a lot of people start building their CV, they have a very archetypal idea of what leadership means, for example. And so they think it's sufficient to put, I led a team of 4, and that means leadership. And it isn't. The fact that you led a team of 4 doesn't mean that you were a good leader. So you really need to start understanding what they mean by leadership, or what they mean by results orientation, or what they mean by decision making, or customer focus, so that you can really build bullet points which really relate to what it is that they're looking for. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So in terms of leadership, this is the way that HR define leadership. So somebody who's able to see the bigger picture and translate this to the team, somebody who influences others, somebody who delegates appropriately or is a good mentor. So in terms of building your bullet points, it's much more effective to talk about mentored a team of 4 people than say that you led them. Or you identified areas of development in your team and put them on special projects to develop those elements. That's a much clearer sign from an HR perspective of what leadership is than to say that you led a team of 4. Another example is teamwork. Most people work in a team, but it doesn't mean that you're a good team player. So, integrating these type of bullet points into your CV is a much better reflection in terms of showing that you have the teamwork ability than saying that you worked in a team. So things like, negotiating with team members, to assign the tasks, based on what people wanted to do, but also how they wanted to develop, or willing to share information or take on somebody else's job because they're not there. These are, again, much better reflection of teamwork. Being open to diversity, understanding that, not everybody is like you, but actually appreciating that diversity because they love the things that you don't do. Again, a reflection of really good teamwork. And these are things that you need to think about when it comes to building your bullet points. Now, in the additional resources, you'll find that there's a manual there with the top 10 competencies, what these mean to HR, and there's an exercise called building a database of key bullet points, which we would really recommend you to do. And I recommend you to do them for 2 reasons. One is because building a CV is a very long process. And if you can build the top 10 competencies that companies are looking for, you're going to save a lot of time when it comes to tailoring for specific positions. So you do this once. So bullet points that reflect leadership, bullet points that reflect orientation to results, bullet points that reflect customer focus. And once you have your database and you start looking at different job postings, all you have to do is copy paste to have an instant tailored CV. So we really recommend you to do this exercise right now because it's going to save you a lot of time when it comes to the application process. So in terms of finding your competencies, I think a perfect way of finding your competencies is thinking about a key achievement that you had at work, something that you were really proud of, and then start asking a lot of how. So how did I do that? And how did I do that? And asking again, how did I do that? And start writing down, because this would really, help you to understand and dig into what is it that really made, what factors were behind this, you being successful in this project. So was it, your ability to get on with all the types of people? Was it your ability to plan things? Was it your ability to implement things? It would really help you to start really understanding what are the key things that you're good at. And if you feel that you're very low on some of them, then you really understand how to use the MBA to develop those other competencies. So once you look at the competency definition, all you have to do is a match between, what you feel is a competency and the competency definition in terms to build, to build the bullet point. There are certain things that I would recommend and do. The first is that you need to learn how to be very tangible in your descriptions. If you're not tangible and it sounds wishy-washy, no recruiter will feel that that's something which is worthwhile. So ways of being tangible, you need to preach through example. It's not sufficient to use these buzzwords of, I implemented an innovative marketing strategy. You actually have to state what was innovative about it. So, I started using social media in my marketing strategy, and this is what led to such great results. So you have to learn how to be, very tangible in the examples that you give. Another way of being tangible is, of course, putting numbers next to things. It's not enough to say that sales went up, than to say that sales went up above, X% above the market forecast. That really shows that sales went up in a tangible manner. The other thing is that you need to limit your bullet points to 2 lines. Bullet points which are far too long, they need to be very bite-sized so that they're easily digestible. If you make things too long, recruiter will immediately zone out and hopefully they would go to the next one. But if every bullet point is so long, you're going to very quickly lose their interest. So make sure that you keep things into short bullet points that are easily read and digested. Things that I definitely would avoid and that I've often seen in CVs that I've reviewed is, you have to have very clear that the recruiter wants to hire you, not the project that you worked on. Now, this is very typical of engineers, but they fall in love with the project that they worked on because it was so tough, and they spend a lot of space describing the project, but actually not what they did for the project. So you need to limit the information of the project purely to frame really what you did for that project. Now, for people who are very technical, you have to avoid technical language. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of recruiters are industrial psychologists, so they haven't a clue what all that technicality means. And it might be very important to you, but to them, they look at this and they think it's a completely different language, so they won't really understand what you're talking about. So try to neutralize your CV of any technical language. Now, typical of cultures that are very collaborative is that they don't like using the first person. And I know it's something which is very typical of the Anglo-Saxon world, that I did this, but this CVs in English at least have to be in the first person. And you need to avoid action verbs like assisted, collaborated, participated, because they don't actually say what you did. They just say that you were there. And the recruiter has no idea whether that meant that you were serving the boss a coffee or whether you're actually really adding value to the project. So if you're worried about it sounding as if, you were the head of the whole thing, just contextualize it. So, did the numbers for the team developing X? But you need to really show them, so when you walked in through the door, exactly what your role was. So was it doing the numbers? Was it writing the conclusions? You need to be very, very specific about what your involvement was on that project that the team delivered. And finally, another thing that I would avoid is repetition of action verbs. I've seen a lot of CVs in which people put, developed, or identified, and you're really missing an opportunity. In the end, you only have one page that you have to reflect a whole variety of skills on. So if it was one project, just develop different aspects of, or use an action verb that develops a different aspect. So in one project, you might be talking about the teamwork for that project. In another, the leadership of that project. So just make sure that you really do express a variety of skills, because even if you're expressing the same thing, which is leadership, the fact that you delegated and then you mentored, it gives a much better expression of leadership than saying, developed. I won't go into this into too much detail, but it's in the additional resources. But you need to understand that different countries classify numbers in a different manner. And it's important to understand what that is, because your number might look incredibly small or incredibly inflated, depending on the way that you define it. So this is the FT definition of how euros should be expressed or how dollars should be expressed. Just make sure you look at this in detail and that your numbers are reflected in the right manner.